But would anyone like to share some of the insights that they had from their room and what their thoughts are around the language of mental health and well-being?
Hello. Yeah, we had a great chat about the language surrounding mental health and well-being. And I think our consensus was that well-being is very much a diluted version of mental health and almost othering. It's kind of in the self-care category and puts the onus on the person suffering or going through whatever they're going through to look after themselves. We also had a chat about qualifications and people coming in to do training and corporate training, and how, you know, being able to say, you know, we're mental health trained versus well-being trained, whether there's a different level of actual ability to run a truly supportive and successful training session and the quality that you would get from both. I can't remember in our group who actually looked up the meaning of both of the words. I can't remember who did it now, but I think that just the meaning of them says it all really about mental health is all encompassing and really needs to be as normal as oh hello, my video changed, needs to be as normal as like physical health. It just needs to be health, and well-being is very fluffy, it's very Instagrammable, and companies really need to be stepping up the game.
That's really interesting. So there's a real perception shift in how mental health is perceived compared to well-being. That's fascinating. Very different discussion to the room that I was in. Maybe we'll get someone from that group to contribute in a little while. Tim, you had your hand up first. I'll come to Tim next and then Jan.
Thank you, Alice. So we were talking along similar lines, and I think the umbrella term well-being, particularly if you think about it from a sort of corporate and employer's perspective, has a sense. It includes a lot of things which contribute to your, you know, general health. So, you know, going for a walk and drinking water and getting good sleep and all those. And we know that all of those things contribute to mental health. But, and you know, we've had various of us have had this conversation before. I think the danger of using well-being as kind of like almost your outcome, you're promoting well-being, is that actually people fall back on stuff that's easy, which is encouraging people to drink water or a fruit basket or a mindfulness app or all of these things. And actually those things they're easy to do, they're easy to roll out. They're fundamentally not going to help people who have poor mental health. They might make some things easier for some people, but it's not getting to the root of the problem. And I think the more that we talk about it in terms of well-being, I think we're diluting the message of actually what we're interested in doing is supporting people's mental health. And some ways of doing that might be things that fit under the well-being banner. But actually, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't get covered by well-being that would make a difference. And that's kind of where we kind of got to, is that well-being feels too broad and too general. And so we actually got more into the conversation about what is mental health a helpful phrase, or are there, because you know the new ISO standard talks about psychological health and safety, and is that a more helpful way of talking about it, given that, you know, mental has connotations and so on and so forth. So but yeah, well-being generally, yeah, diluted was a great word to use.
Fabulous. Thank you for that, Tim. And it seems apparent to me so far that there is no consensus even among the professionals, which is a little bit disconcerting. Maybe we can have a vote at the end of this and see how we get on. Let's go over to Jan next, and then Jan will go from you to Neil. Jan, you're on mute at the moment if you'd like to take yourself off.
Am I unmuted? Yeah.
You're perfect.
Yeah, I think similarly, the conversation around, I guess as a psychologist, it's very clear, you know, mental health is a diagnosable condition with treatments and pathways. However, as someone who works in this field in organisations, I know that how stigmatising it is to say that you have a mental health condition. And so I think it can sometimes be a barrier for people to step forward and share the difficulties that they're experiencing, and also for employers and organisations to sometimes feel overwhelmed and scared about what do we do with staff who are experiencing mental health issues. I guess for me, I see it as a continuum. You know, it's not an either or. Is that we have mental health well-being, and there's things that we can put in place to support us to stay mentally healthy. But yeah, I think there is no consensus. That's the problem. And do we need to have a consensus?
Yeah, so maybe it could be up to the individuals, and then depending on the context in which you're speaking, you can alternate between the two, and yeah, just kind of consider it on a contextual basis each time. Thank you, Dan, really insightful. Thank you for contributing. Neil, we'll come to you, and then we got Aisha too afterwards as well. So Neil, what would you like to share?
The group I was in, we started off by me breaking the ice, pointing out that I had a lecturer who used to call the whole process shit shoveling, which got people talking. They all sort of, yeah, there's a lot of nodding going on. A lot of people agreed. We then got into the details that it depends on the individual you need to talk to and the terminology there. We played around with the idea that actually well-being is a broader spectrum thing than simply mental health. And there was also this idea that perhaps we should talk about it sometimes in terms of being a mental fitness issue rather than a mental health issue, because mental health does have negative connotations these days.
Interesting. Yeah, so it's like there's a certain perception attached to each of those two chunks, even though they very much do intersect and overlap at times. Very interesting. Thank you, Neil. Thank you for sharing your group's insights there. And finally, we'll round off this conversation with Aisha too. I'm so bad with pronunciation. I'm sorry, please do correct me.
Yeah, it's Aisha too. It's you've done well. So in our group, we didn't necessarily have consensus on which was the best phrase to use or the best wording to use. What we did have, though, was agreement that the way that the support for mental health is managed right now is definitely not effective. And we were curious as to why it was always something that was done after the fact, after someone got severely ill or something really bad happened, as opposed to having safeguards in place before someone gets really poorly. And one of the people in my group spoke about something that they had done in one of the residential spaces that they managed. They had actually done an audit of the space in a practical way, as well as the emotional way that it had been managed, and they had co-produced a way of living in those spaces so that it was more preventative and people were less likely to get, mentally to suffer from mental health issues. I'm trying to find the right word, and such. So it was quite interesting that we were all in agreement that definitely the stigma attached to mental health is part of where this challenge with the phrase mental health comes from. But I personally feel as though the stigma that attached to it is what should be dealt with, as opposed to trying to find a different word that's less stigmatized and whatnot. But we managed to cram a lot into our 15 minutes.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for contributing, and thank you to all of our contributors today. It's such an interesting discussion, so you'll get another chance to dive into the specifics of this in the second breakout room. Before we go back into our small groups, though, I wanted to come to our community partners for today. So those of you that paid for your ticket today, £1 from every pound is going to go to Talk About It, Mate. So I think we should have Mike in the room, who's going to talk about the work that they do, and he's got some slides to share with us. Where have you gone, Mike? There he is.
Yeah, can I share?
You should be able to. Let me know if not.
Have a look. See if this works. Can you see that?
Loading. Perfect.
Right. Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I was in supervision. For those of you who don't know, I'm Mike. I run Talk About It, Mate. But I'm also a trainee counsellor. So, yeah. Sorry, is my headset working?
Yeah, you're fine, mate.
Fine. Okay, so I know a few faces in here, which is great. And if people I haven't met, then hopefully this can make an impression on you. But first thing I'd say, thanks for Alice for letting us do this. I know how much effort and courage it takes to set up a mental health community, and I don't think for this kind of thing there's anyone better in Greater Manchester to do that than Alice. Having met her, I'll come on to that. I really do know when people aren't in this for the right reasons. And I think that's really easy to see because you wouldn't be doing it for so long, because it doesn't always have. There are some difficult moments working in the community side, the voluntary side of mental health, especially if you started it from scratch, whether it's corporate or whether it's community, what we do. So I do feel that Talk About It Mates work very much complements what Alice does on the corporate side. We're also going to try and build that in, and Alice has been a big driver in that. So basically what Talk About It Mate is all about is peer support. Now, someone mentioned there the mental health continuum, and also how we say the words mental health. And a counsellor of mine I worked with about neurodiversity said feeling good and thriving instead of mental health. Or I love the idea of mental fitness. I work with a lot of men's groups, and masculine men don't want to see vulnerability as a weakness, so you have to rebrand it as a strength. Once it's rebranded as a strength, people can start to move up this mental health continuum. As someone who's been in the red, and I don't know if anyone here has ever been in the red, that's not a place you want to be. It's also not a place where you want to be picking people up to help them in an organisation like ours. The first thing I would say about any good organisation like this is that you've got to be very, very good at signposting. You can actually do more harm to somebody by picking them up when you're not the right person to help them, instead of passing them on to the appropriate source of support. So if anything, peer support is the answer to the mental health epidemic, and also it's the way to relieve the pressure on the NHS. So the last thing I'd want to do is pick up people who are at absolute crisis point. It would just pass them on to where they need to go to. However, if you're getting up this mental health continuum, you can start to help yourself by accessing peer support. And also then you get into the surviving, thriving, excelling, which is kind of, that's when you start to put your own self-help things in place. And many of the people in here are massive change makers. So I'd imagine you were at this end of the continuum. For what it's worth, I'm in the middle this week because I've had a bit of a shocker. But I'm here today, and that's what matters. And a big part of peer support is showing up. So we progressed from 3.5 years from having a meetup group to now we offer so much. So peer support, the way in a nutshell, is people coming together to share their experiences in a safe environment, very important, non-hierarchical. And so I'll be there to facilitate the session, or one of our volunteers might be. But the growth of peer support is in the people in the room. So I can see, let's take the person I can see. It might be something that Kyle says that I identify with, and then Nicola might say something and Michelle goes, I get that. That's the whole point of peer support. You're taking it away from one person having all that responsibility, and the group kind of runs itself after a while, but you have to have the right, kind of ethics and frameworks in place. But that's what we specialize in, and you can see from the icons as a visual learner that can be done in a variety of ways. So a lot of people ask me, how is it done? Well, we've got a podcast episode where 8 men got together and recorded that and modeled what that is. Now, it's by providing this often. So the chairs represent our physical meetings. So Archon Homes, big up to Archon Homes, have commissioned us to do one in Levenshulme every Thursday for men, and it's free, and there will be someone there, because that time that they show up and there's not someone there, who's there to capture them? We all know the problems with suicide rates with men. We need to start listening to our users and providing what they want to make it a user-led opportunity. There's blogs, there's football. That's a great way to reach men. And we don't only just work with men. In fact, our women's groups online have now way more attended than our men's groups. So you listen to your users, and it's a real case of build it and they will come. So yeah, I know I'm really running out of time, but I got cut off the last time I did a presentation, so I'm quite enjoying this. We're doing quite a lot. So we have like a walking group in Salford that's been funded. We've got the men's group, we've got a podcast, we've got the football groups. There's loads and loads of ways you can do that. And the last thing I'd want to say is that you don't have to be an expert to deliver peer support. I would look at every single one of you and say you are all an expert in your own life. And as soon as we get that into our heads, we don't disqualify ourselves, or that imposter syndrome gets in the way. And we show up as our pure, imperfect self. And the last thing I'd say is, obviously the proof's in the numbers. That's how many we did. We're probably on 100 and odd now this year. Again, often, always free. Often. Don't come to me for business advice, because I'm not making a lot of money. But eventually you build that on the top of that. But yeah, this is the last thing I'm going to say is the session is safe. We have a contract or group agreement, so everyone knows where they stand. You check in, say what you need to say to be in the session. We choose a topic which is usually generated from the group, and then we discuss that, and then we check out. And then everything else that happens off the back of that as a result of the courage, the compassion, and the connection that is run through every single Talk About It Mate event. So thank you for giving me the time. Have a really great meeting.
Thank you, Mike. I knew you'd talk over, so I was like, if I go in 10 minutes, it'll take 12 and a half. So my plan worked brilliantly. What I would say is I've been a long-time supporter of Mike and the work that he does. He's so enthusiastic and passionate about the work that he does, as many of us will be. But he makes a lot of racket over on Instagram. So I would say, if nothing else, please after today, give him a follow on Instagram, and just know that you're really helping give him a boost. And, you know, giving the ticket price over to Mike is just a small gesture to show our appreciation for the work that he's doing, because a lot of it is for free that he does. And if you'd like to get involved as a volunteer or anything, I'm sure Mike would love to talk to you. So please do head over to Instagram. Right, we're going to do one more 10-minute breakout room this time, Kyle, if you wouldn't be so kind, and then we'll have one very quick check-in when you'll get back to wish you on your merry way. So should we do this? Oh, Chris Green, I can see you got your hand up. Let's come to you.
Hi. So yeah, it was really interesting, because we talked about how being open about having a great day, you know, is important, as well as having a bad day. And we talked to, I think it was Rachel. So forgive me, Rachel, if I've got your name wrong. And Rachel was talking about, you know, posting on social media that she was having a great day, and getting absolutely slated for that. You know, and to me that, and we were talking about how, you know, how negative that is, and how when is it wrong for us to be saying we're having a great day when we are, because actually we want to encourage other people to talk about having good days as well as having bad days, and that narrative around when we talk about mental health, why do we start the conversation about mental health as a negative, when actually we could be starting the conversation about having a really good day and being in a great space today? And I thought that was a really great point, but I was so, you know, disappointed that she was getting such bad reaction on social media for being open enough to say, you know, I'm having a good day.
That's so interesting. And I don't know if she did this on purpose, but our next meetup, we will actually be talking about social media and mental health. So that leads me to thank you for the segue, Chris. That's fantastic. Thank you for contributing. That was a really lovely point to end on, actually. Thank you so much.